Mio is a character that I went in with having really no expectations for, but not in a bad way. I only watched like 2 trailers for Xenoblade 3 because I didn't want to risk watching too many, as some game companies love to put out just way too much in trailers, man. But if I had to give what my genuine first impression of Mio when meeting her when our sides fought, was intrigue and surprise. Because even though at the time she was the opposition and was actively opposing us, including Van Damme with his declarations, her emotions and actions manifesting in a sort of frustration, sassiness, and desire to kill all felt very real and palpable. It made her feel like an immediately natural character given the narrative that was being introduced to us. And creating that feel is vastly thanks to Xenoblade 3's immediately established high level of maturity through Chapter 1's composition. And keep in mind, maturity in storytelling isn't just about level of violence and stakes within, it's also about how a story cares for and executes its emotional range and weight, not just those from its narrative, but along with the many nuances of the themes they intended to bring to the table and from the characters they present, along with their places within the story, big or small. And of course, a more mature or hardcore quote-unquote narrative does not mean you don't have humor or happy/positive moments and positive messages. It's about the proper timing of all those things and not undercutting anything unnecessarily on either side. There are ways to do these things. Now, all of these components Xenoblade 3 knows well, and that's how the characters, and for this video's case, Mio's character progression, was able to really feel consciously receivable and made into being satisfying for players due to her conscious growth from a determined killer to a competent and caring leader and warrior, willing to defy the state of the entire world and its authorities, no matter the threat that they pose and what may become of her. However, don't start typing in the comments yet, I'm not done yet. Mio's progression specifically is very unusual due to the nature of how she's written, and not in a bad way. She's actually, funnily enough, similar to Noah's first state, but has a key difference. But we'll get to Noah heavily in another video. Audible wink wink if you get my picture. But for now, let me really analyze and dive into Mio's character this time around and express why I consider her to be such an exceptionally strong character, MC, and story focal point. But first, fun fact, 91.1% of you beautiful viewers aren't actually subscribed, and 8.9% of you are, which thank you all for watching these videos in the first place, period. But if you haven't subbed yet, please do, you won't regret it, and it helps me immensely to keep doing this. It's right there and done with a quick tap or click, and if you're not sure yet, then let me earn that sub from you by the end of the video, so please enjoy this character dive for Mio. So what is unique to Mio's character? Well, although when we get introduced to her, she has much animosity towards us, the Kavesi, the war, and even Van Damme for trying to open their eyes initially to where she has to get punched out, like I kinda low-key mentioned earlier. This isn't the first time she has gone through a big perspective change that would crack through the brainwashing of their birth. The first time was with Miyabi prior to the events of the game. Mio started off her life as a talented fighter and exceptionally competent soldier. But what she lacked was patience and understanding of others, that she was more skilled than from a soldier perspective. And that's why I believe, strangely enough, that her commander gave her the role of officer partner to Miyabi because of this, which is low-key one of the clutchest decisions ever made for this game's turnout, by the way. So through Miyabi, not only did we get one of my favorite scenes in Xenoblade 3, which I talked about a lot more in my video about the best scenes of each chapter of Xenoblade 3, which check out that video if you haven't already, link below. But Mio, for the first time, got exposed to possibilities and truths of the world she never thought of before, as well as a new angle of what really can matter to those that want to really live their lives. Mio learned that no matter how harsh she wants to try to be to someone by comparing her superior combat skills and making anything other than fighting feel inferior, it can just not matter to someone who has found value in this world outside of those things. To someone like Miyabi, who has discovered the truth that they don't live to fight, they just fight to live. Despite the endless war and hatred, both sides fight for the same things and are comprised off the same origin of life, as seen and felt by her through the motes. And Mio felt every single beat of Miyabi's conviction through her music. And this isn't a case where Miyabi sucked at combat but was gifted at music. She actually wasn't too good at the officer music either, but her heart and passion going into it is what it truly means to be an officer. Mio went from faking playing the tunes to being wholeheartedly attached to it. She began to seek out those to be kind to, like with Sena. She felt grief for losing a dear friend, and yet why did she behave the way she did at the game's start with all of these things? It's like she forgot all of those. But that's what makes Mio such an interesting character, and honestly, an archetype that easily could have been done so incorrectly. It's because she didn't truly forget all that she had learned. She had only really relapsed. So when experiencing ouroboros for the first time, her heart was able to be open to the atrocities that they've committed themselves, despite despite having suffered dear losses of their own. She was the first to try and care for Vandam when he was giving his last words off, even if she was shocked he knew of her remaining time left on this earth, and based on her facial language, still at this point unsure if she wants to actually go on living. And now remember, there's layers to how she has to progress now. She has to relearn what she learned, not just in a new way as it's already harder in the first place, but also has to try and face why any of that and more even matters at all, given how little time she has left to live at this point, which is just an ever-growing stress on her that at first is extremely subtle if you don't notice her facial expressions in the Vandam send-off scene, or you don't think much about her dismissiveness to Noah when he asked her later at the end of chapter 1 if she wished she had more time. And now before going further into that part, the reality that Ouroboros gave them thanks to Vandam's last-ditch effort to Mio wasn't just a new lease on life. It was also a new potential anxiety on her as much as it was a new freedom. That's why, though she sternly fought back against Taion's disdain at even conversing or reasoning with the Kavesi side, she still wasn't fully aware of the gravity of the situation. But to be fair, none of them were. Noah just happened to be the most ready, excited, and willing to push everyone forward into this new world, allowing Mio an assist in taking that step forward, getting her to feel confident in her introductions, finding the new clothes, and getting acquainted with the girls as a group. Also, just saying, Noah has his own realizations he had to make despite his head start, quote unquote. But again, Mio's the main focus right now. We'll bring in only others as needed, alright? So the campfire scene at the end of chapter 1, that's the real definer of Mio and where her character is going to go from here in the game. Still initialization process with this chapter 1. It's so nice to have this clear-cut point so early on in the game, you know, because some writers make the mistake of not establishing a quote-unquote starting point for characters until a bit further on into the game, which is a very dangerous habit. They just kind of have these characters automatically just start going and going and going. So her admitting to trusting Vandam because of how much she thinks about what she can achieve in the time she has, what she may or may not get to leave behind, and how others she sent off have felt in them nearing their death, it all really means a lot, which is how Noah ended up asking her in the first place if she wants to live more, and she just says she doesn't know and it doesn't matter. It's an interesting case that kind of feeds back into itself because she gets to see the entire lives of others, what they think, wonder how they feel, being so connected to them and even going on past their death. And since she's at a point where she can now do so much more with her life due to the Ouroboros task, what she wonders is in a way given to her, but it also makes her question the value or merit of it all, and if it'll really even matter. That loop feeds back into itself, and due to this being a task they were just given and have to take the reins with basically no guidance, there's almost nothing to give her a sense of security. And a sense of security by being guided by somebody that's really deep in things and has experience is so much different from being comforted by somebody that's just confident or charismatic but still technically as in the dark as you are, you know? It's like the difference between a teacher and somebody you're in the class with that's just on top of things. Kind of like that, but it does help in the short term. That short-term assistance and companionship is what helps refresh Mio and get her by to keep her focused through into chapter 2, as she helps to keep the group's animosity between each other down, relaxes even if she's suffering in the heat, and most importantly, despite her dwindling time, still wants to make sure they journey safely instead of quickly, all while getting to know Noah more through conversation while traveling, as well as in dire combat situations like against Moebius to save Ethel and Colony 4 at chapter 2's end. And speaking of Ethel, she's how Mio's character gets brought back around to the aspect of who can really help her when it comes to dealing with the growing pressure of her life's end, as there's still things that she may or definitely wants to do or has to do. Because now the stakes have just grown immensely with their first kill on Moebius in a major situation, and by wanting to have somebody she can view as an inspiration, because as we know, Ethel is also nearing her life's end as well. And for Ethel, her duel and relationship with Kamaravi and what comes of it means everything to her life, regardless of if it makes sense to anybody else but herself and Kamaravi. And it only amps up from here, because Mio is constantly given reasons to live, which for most people would be great, but for Mio, she's so interesting as a whole so much because of this phase of her arc where she's trying to find reasons to live, discover what she wants her legacy to be, behave in the moment and save lives, but also doesn't feel adequately deserving of the life she has been given from it being saved. How does she handle this new phase of her life at this point to get to those huge climactic moments in chapter 4 and beyond? So come chapter 3, Mio is fascinated that Ethel still wants to keep the rivalry with Kamaravi going despite being free from the flame clock. It's a questioning, but overall a fascination. This is where her further pondering about a purpose to life really begins to influence her behavior and mental state in both positive and sadly negative ways that are both understandable in the form of both by helping the rest of of ouroboros how she can and applying it to her, because as of now, she only has 2 months to live, and the journey to the city is essentially just that, but also in certain cases and situations behaving more increasingly estranged to the rest of the group. She encourages Sena to enjoy the benefits of the work that they've done, even if there are those that would hold hatred or blame against them for being Agnian, because their work will be rewarded even in small ways. Yet she refuses to group bathe, just decides to go alone, even at first not even wanting to bathe, but then she goes to look up at the moon as she previously noticed her mark getting smaller, now feeling the weight of life on her. And then this whole feeling turns from trying to find a reason to live, purpose in caring, and trying to do right in the world into all of that, plus, thanks to Ethel's consideration, what they wish for the world to be like, which is a whole different component entirely. And these mental sacks create more complications for Mio, as she's already struggling with this half hesitancy. That's how Mio contains her constant back and forth, inside and outside of her. But at this point, thanks to Ethel, has a short-term confidence boost, even if her worries still exist, which allows chapter 3 to shift more focus on Taion and Eunie's relationship, but she's still able to ensure Sena knows that they'll get their time to shine. She's able to brainstorm with Nova what the concept of families even are. She's able to unlock her ouroboros starter form, and after a successful and emotional battle and revelations for everyone, relax a bit. So going into the time of chapter 4, and actually basically into the rest of the game, is where her characterization boosts and changes and finds its place. The complications of her mindset, the wounds of her past, her real feelings bursting out and showing themselves, all while still having to experience so many new and old things for better or for worse, allowing her identity to really be reshaped and her core writing to be evolved. And it's just all allowed by what chapter 4 initializes from the many allusions and foreshadowing from the past 3 chapters, accompanied by some clear-cut components that still had hidden details from us and the remaining cast of characters. But these are what take her above and beyond, not just as a character, but as an MC. So you enjoying so far, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and do it. You will not regret it, trust. And ironically enough, her constant assistance of others, like with Taion at the start of the chapter, and not caring enough for others to truly help her, is what causes even more swelling of these emotions inside of her that starts spiraling, because she keeps telling others what she needs to hear herself, but it's still much harder to deal with than just needing true words to her, you know? She tells Taion that her and Noah were worried and that their problems are shared, because just because someone says they're doing okay doesn't mean everything is actually fine with them. And that couldn't possibly be more ironic, considering how much she hides, not just because she doesn't want to worry others, but out of not thinking she deserves to be alive right now in the first place. And she's so hard focused in this mentality that she doesn't notice that the others are willing to do exactly what she does for them, and they choose to actively do so. And keep that in mind for when the next phases come into play, because that's going to explain even more about how all the remaining chapters after this become emotionally infamous for good reason. So back to Mio. When Noah begins to really see her visibly lose her balance and she mentions how she's fine for now, he tells her not to hide these things, and she denies it really being a serious matter. Her several mentalities are clashing once again, things that conflict when they should be existing as one or the other, which is exactly why by this point, if it wasn't called out more vividly, she might have stood no chance of surviving the coming physical and emotional threat to all of their lives. Although Noah was right, at this point he's a bit more willing to let up on sensitive topics than Eunie is, which is why Eunie called her out on being so detached about it and how she truly feels about her remaining lifespan, because Mio just casually bringing it up and making comment to it makes all of them just feel guilty about the nonchalantness. And this doesn't mean Eunie's more mean, that's not what this is saying at all, or what I'm saying at all. Eunie's just the type to really want to make sure that sensitive issues can be handled sooner than later, and is not afraid to stand up and take it head on, even if she's the one needing the help, which is why as soon as she's stern about it with Mio, she sits down calmly, eloquently with Mio and Manana and lets Mio open up on her own, and has very sweet conversation about these things. Mio needed this moment. This might be one of the most critical times and moments for her, a hard push to get her to unlock the doors she had locking her emotions away, because it's way easier to get someone to grow like that through a positive manner than a harsh, truly terrible, life-threatening experience coming first. Mio finally letting the truth that she's flustered about in regards to her waning life, not even saying that she doesn't look like she's flustered because she's trying hard to hide it, but because she genuinely believes she shouldn't be alive right now because of how Miyabi saved her. And I'm stressing it so hard because there's a huge gap between trying to convince yourself of something hard and having already convinced yourself of something like that to be true. Even though she can find some relation to Eunie's side with them being saved by Ethel, the journey of difference in Mio and Miyabi's dynamic from beginning to end was vastly different. It was more personal. Even playing Miyabi's officer tune just to tap into those past emotions finally, she can't help but let the tears flow. Not only does she firmly believe she should be dead, but she just does not get why Miyabi let her live. And if Miyabi came back like Yorin, she just wants to know why she did it. It's such a level of complicated feeling and thinking, even more so due to the fact that each of their lives are on time limits right now. So in their eyes, even if they succeed in their mission, all of them have around, well, outside of her, just 2 years left at most. And they're unsure how long they'll be in this fight in total. This could take years for all they know. So for Mio, take that feeling that the others have and amplify it so many times over, as she is super in the red right now. That's why I'm so glad we get the incredible moment from the repercussions of the scene with Eunie, because at this point, the floodgates for Mio are wide open. She's starting to feel like the feeling in her body is fading. She's dropping things. And so even though Noah is trying to console her, she snaps on him still without saying too much that's bad, but she's just being honest now, no holding back, like he said, right? Sometimes objective optimism isn't what's needed to make somebody feel better, you know? And the emotional maturity of even the argument between them is actually very big. She acknowledges that she agreed to this despite the conditions, but also the fact that she feels he doesn't understand the complications of her emotions and circumstances, but it's also because Noah doesn't have the new information that Eunie just got, you know? But because of that, he still did need to be a bit more considerate emotionally rather than just logically, which he can be easily, he just didn't in that moment. He just made the wrong decision, which is why, although I get what Sena was saying and she was mostly right, I kind of wish she didn't tell him and it was something he figured out overnight, even if it was off screen, but that's just a minor gripe. It's okay. Like I said, they're making progress, but this war has been going on so long. They may be free from the flame clock now, but they're still limited by their 10-year total lifespan. And so once again, Mio is able to just become more and more likable, because the next morning she's able to admit that she was essentially snapping because she was finally succumbing to the pressure of things. But feelings like those do need to be let out. As Noah decides to be more emotionally considerate, she also gives back to him and accepting him into her heart and pain past. But for the first time, thanks to Eunie and Banana Prior, she wants to take a big step forward to tying herself to somebody. She wants to exchange flutes with Noah. That's what the symbolism of this meaning. She wants to establish another strong connection to where they tap into each other's hearts, establishing the first strong connection for herself in a long time, due to them having been slowly getting closer anyways. But this moment is something more. Like Noah said, he feels they're getting on the same wavelength now, and it's not just thanks to ouroboros literally bringing them together physically. Now they're going into their real selves, and that just means so much to what makes Mio and also Noah awesome characters. There's so many times in media where two characters, namely a man and a woman, are brought together due to the circumstances of the narrative and their relationship, be it friendship or even if it develops into a romance. It sometimes feels forced because it wasn't executed well or well enough. But because of in this game, they allowed Noah and Mio to really see and feel each other's history through ouroboros, but also let them behave like real people to discover more of these things and not rush into making them great friends and into lovers, but a natural progression. Even having disagreed on things in the past and not always being joined at the hip, it makes payoff like this moment amongst the sunrise feels so incredibly nice and rewarding, making the players convinced of the strength of their bond growing and even desire a romance to be formed between these two now. And if it weren't for Mio's barriers being broken down thanks to Eunie's assertion, her cracking under pressure may have resulted in much worse consequences both for Noah, the group's chemistry, Mio, and all of their composure and combat as a team, especially with the upcoming battle. But because she did have this, Mio continues to ramp up and escalate in quality relentlessly as she has stepped up from being convinced she shouldn't be alive and not feeling it's worth for people to worry for her or for her to wish for things in life, to refusing to let Moebius toy with their lives or other people's lives, stalking into them and shouting at the top of her lungs even as she finally expresses her disdain for them treating Ethel's death as pointless, as with her recent growth she'd be even more ready to have learned and wanted to bond with Ethel too. Even when confronted with what they thought was the very queen, she was still surprised but still giving her all and wanted to support the others in that fight, even if in the end it wasn't actually Queen Melia. And also came the new mystery of N. It's not over yet though, because even though she does at this point want to forge meaningful relationships, she understands what value people give to their lives, even if it may be nonsense to others on the surface, and she believes she deserves this life. Her life is still dwindling by the second, and the fight is still very much ahead. She's now in a position that to some people in stories, especially good one, is even tougher. Now why did I say that? These should be all good things, right? To some, actually caring about your life, others' lives, and wanting in life, and the risk risk of it losing it all is also a danger. She must learn to fight being ready to die, not just as a soldier, but as a hero, an actual friend to many, as well as the possibility of losing more she actually cares about, similar to how she did with Miyabi. To get to this point was major. She feels that she may not live to the end of the fight, she may not get all of her desires, and she may not be there for the reveals of all the answers to this world that they're hunting for. But coming to appreciate things in the moment is how, as the Ouroboros team has reached the city and their lives changed forever, it becomes another game-changing moment for the players, as well as Mio's character experiences people that can live long, full lives, have children, and what babies look and feel like. Proper graves and send-offs. Why people that have all of these things in their long lives still want to fight on against Moebius. The shackles of Moebius aren't just only on the Kavesi and the Agnians, but on the city folk as well. No matter what malice that the jealous or scorned Ouroboros candidates had, which it's to a degree warranted and the frustration is understandable even though they shouldn't behave the way they are, Mio can now be willing to do this task in the name of the bigger picture, not purely abstractly, but having tangible knowledge, insight, and feeling of the goal. She now has a boots on the ground experience of the nature of what this fight is really for. Not just for these other people, but for her own self. Even it's only for, in her perspective, a little bit before she dies. It's for the families, the children, the babies, the memories of those who died in and out of the city, for her own satisfaction and desire, and more. That's why she still is willing to talk with Lanz and feel his mutual pain about both of them being alive thanks to somebody directly giving their life for them. As that's another layer of connection she has to someone that's high quality, she's going to keep on going till her last flame flickers, and nobody, not even the threat of the eclipse deadline, Gondor's harshness when testing their resolve, or even the confrontation with N and M can make her back down from this fight, or even collapse to the kitchen anymore, or even still her step enough not to make a decision that saves every single one of their lives down the line. Because the masterful performance Mio had to play by acting as M for the entire last month before quote-unquote her execution and homecoming was astounding. It's already incredible enough the revelations we got of Mio's feelings for Noah, even though it was M that was locked in a cell. Both of them had access to each other's thoughts and feelings that their body held. That's why I truly believe that M was speaking as Mio to Noah about being afraid to say his actual name for so long. It was our Mio's real feelings, as we know Mio had access to M's emotions and feelings from being in her body and their link as well. Without the breakthrough she got in chapter 4, the fight would have ended here. She would not have been capable of doing what she had to do to clutch up, to say the least. The admission of Mio's heart being susceptible to breaking from admitting the new feelings she got from Noah changed Xenoblade 3. This whole cell scene of this back and forth changed the entire game. There's already vastly different levels of emotional outpours, but this one was like no other and truly was a cultivation of all the well-paced, wonderfully crafted, and thought-out relationship building of the entire Ouroboros team, but especially Mio's mental and emotional state and bond with Noah. Even with him acting as Mio, I'm fully confident that Mio would have behaved and said the exact same things. Even though the rest were suffering massively from despair, she would have held her head high, being content with all she's done, because as we know, and I've gone over in this video so far, she was all now prepared to die. She just had to grow to be prepared for it while having gained reason and desire to live again, on top of truly being more connected to the people around her. She had to get past that barrier, like I said. Her feelings toward Noah, how proud she is of Sena, how appreciative she was of Manana, Eunie, and Lanz for their shared talks, how much Taion's words meant to her about how they wish to carry on her legacy and if they could give her more of their own time so she could live longer. And then finally, M's wellspring of despair, but at the end of the day, hope that something can be born from Mio's survival, even when it comes to N and his chance of returning to be who he was as Noah. Just as Mio says what was hers became M's, and what M held became part of her in turn. But it goes for all of their experiences, and how Mio was a beautifully written character composed of the hopes, dreams, shared experiences, and literal lives connected to her, literally or by bonds. Her resolve couldn't have been more war-breakingly strong without M's final addition to everything she gained over the toughest phase of her seemingly eternal life, because like I said way back, Mio suffered a huge loss in her life after learning such good things for the first time, but that loss set her back so much. So to have to deal with learning this all over again, on top of the compounding additional things due to her draining life and waning life in the new Ouroboros reality, the emotional effect of her sense of morality was 10 times more difficult. But she did it, and she wasn't alone. But so much of it was her own willingness to put in the effort herself, but also being able to accept good things no matter how long or short her life was, which is why it's wonderful powerful that even though post chapter 6 intro she now had much more life to live, she didn't have to worry about her timer anymore. She never backslid. It's so easy for writers to backslide a character's progression after a learned experience or getting something you've always wished for but seemed impossible, because Mio wished for more life, right? But she was finally able to accept the fact of her death but still face things head on even so. So to get more life to live now, she easily could have abused that blessing and just reset her character, but she never once did. And some people think that would be a way or besmirching the writing of a character, but it really isn't. If a character goes through a hard-hitting experience and they change immensely from it, a good character doesn't suddenly get reset back when the trauma is solved or fixed or quote-unquote reverted. Even if it was something that seemed impossible, they still learned all that was imperative for them to have learned from that dramatic experience. And when the writer is good, they know that won't make the character revert, and it doesn't spit on the message that is being sent. It doesn't spit on the themes that is being portrayed. And that's why Mio still continues to shine even after the incredible crescendo of chapter 5's end and chapter 6's first half. And I say first half because to me, Mio didn't just stop flourishing massively in chapter 6 when he finally gained control of the game again after defeating Anne, the false Agnian queen, and the following scenes to close it out, but all the way through to her consoling Noah about his own feelings towards his lack of ability to save her, while the rest of them as a leader, hero, and friend. When she reveals the further destruction of the city and how M felt, along with revealing the full situation in history along with Sena, literally getting there and utilizing the genuine power of the officer's tune, conducting through the Sword of Origin to amplify it, and playing her heart out while speaking and calling out to Miyabi genuinely through her heart, and even still feeling as though she has so much to learn about being an officer, and that she'll keep going even though after saving Miyabi, and Miyabi recognizing the gorgeousness of her and Noah's melody, and allowing Noah to keep her officer flute till his voice has truly been heard, calling Mio the greatest officer she has ever seen, Mio still is able to acknowledge that she can grow, especially because she's not alone. And this does not mean that people do the growing for her, or that they cannot do these things by themselves, or that they are unfunctional as individuals. No. And in that moment, it's meant to be about as an officer, I'm talking about her growth, but to Mio, she's mature enough to acknowledge how far she's come and how far she can still go, not only in this fight, or not even if it's nearing its end, but she's seen just how much farther life can be pushed to have value and purpose, not just in a war. And we just see how much Mio stands by the rest of them and how much more she is in tune with living her life. She gives the Kavesi group exactly the support they need in moments alone as a trio, as Euron sacrifices himself to kill Moebius D after the interruption of them waking up Queen Nia. She respects the Queen of Agnes, which, given all they've done, even though they need her help, bad writers, which they had done this before, would make this some sort of power struggle or superiority battle where it's old gen versus new gen. But no, they all can stand on their own as characters. We know the history of Nia, we know what Mio's gone through and everything she has progressed to, even if it's still fresh, but there is no disrespect, literally or as an undertone, because them being strong characters, especially strong female characters, what that means does not mean making them unlikable or know-it-all or passive-aggressive or make them feel better than everybody else. That does nothing. Humility, strength of heart, unwillingness to yield, having no issue embracing your femininity or romance things, fighting for what you believe, and knowing that not everything can be done alone. Now, when writing strong characters, either male or female, there are things that fall on both sides and that are shared, as there are many things that are universal, writing a good character, but there are also things that individually fall on either side, one or the other, things that writing a male or writing a female character individually call for and things they speak to, and that's wonderful. Mio is an incredible character, and even more so an incredible female character, not just in Xenoblade, but period for media. Man, I really do love her character, and over time I've grown to really appreciate just how solid she is. Even if she may not be my favorite character in the game, I really do love her a lot. The characters in that game are just that good. You just gotta pick somebody, you know? One moment that really speaks to just how solid of a character she is in chapter 7 during Noah's side story, and they end up defeating Moebius T. Noah is going to begin off-seeing Chris as he is now dying, and Sena asks Mio if she's going to join, but Mio just denies. She says no, and you just fully see the depth of emotion on her face, the complication. There's nothing wrong with getting help or being supported, but she understands that sometimes there's a time and a place just for a person to stand in a position alone to handle and act. And off-seeing his officer mentor and precious friend, she knows Noah will be okay. but it's important for him to have this outpour of emotional feelings uninterrupted. This level of not just emotional maturity, but emotional intelligence and consideration is wonderful to see, and how it continuously pushes the envelope for this game time and time again. It carries right on into both her and Noah's struggle to get in to see the error of his ways, to see that he doesn't have to remain as he is, that there's still time left for him to change, that no matter what he's done, they're giving him an opportunity to see the light, that Moebius's brainwashing is making him behave exactly as it has tricked him to thinking he needs to. Check out my character analysis of Moebius if you haven't seen it, because I go way more into his thought process and mental state and his personality and identity and what creates his stubbornness there. But it really comes down to he's ashamed and never wanted to do this, but he made his choice and feels there's no way back. So check out that video, link is below. But Mio knows exactly what N needs to know, how M felt, that she can still be resonated with even now despite the atrocities he's committed. Even as she cries M's tears, begging N to understand, N needs to know that it's time to let his sadness go, and she is pushing so much harder for that, because it's time to realize that N went too far, that M wanted nothing more than for them to go back to just being Noah and Mio, no longer N and M. Even if the choice N made was understandable and came from a positive desire, he was exploited. He was given an ultimatum, and it was at the cost of way too much. Mio's expression of everything she learned throughout the game is exactly what helped to save N's entire reality and N from being a sad one, all the way through to defeating Moebius when she finally is able to give Noah her full feelings after the fight's over. N and M get this send-off as they see their spirits, but now it's time for her and Noah. The thanks, her appreciation for him being a part of why her wishes were able to come true, still using his name by the way, while also accepting everything she was able to do for him from his side. The love she feels for him and him for her is real and undeniable. It's natural, it's rewarding, it's long past due, trust me, and it's flourishing from a place of true personal growth, passion, happiness, resolve, and much, much more. Even being worlds apart, they'll never let their feelings go, all the way up to even kissing. She and him acknowledge this, but at the end of the day, they can't help but trying to run back to each other as the worlds are splitting. And even with everything Mio has learned, there's still that desire that she's fought for all this time, because to a degree, it is unfair that after everything they went through, they still don't get to have that peace. But they keep up the faith, because even though they want nothing more than their lives that they worked so hard for, they have to just have faith that this isn't over, that one day they'll be able to see each other again, no matter how much of an origin is different from what happened in Ionios. I firmly believe it too. I have full faith that Mio and Noah, as well as the entire Ouroboros group, will meet again in some way, shape, or form, and Mio and Noah can reunite their love for each other and the rest with their feelings as well, all fully remembering the events of Ionios. Is it wishful thinking? Could be, but why not? They'll fight for it, and I'll also believe for it. But Mio is truly an incredible character. Do not get it twisted, and she is one of the biggest reasons why Xenoblade 3 is as strong of a game narratively in writing and just feeling as it is. It's palpable. Her character from the beginning, even without all of the details, felt natural. It felt real. In each chapter and step of the way, the game represented her and the many character arcs she had to go through in a wonderful manner. And without the people around her also, she wouldn't be who she came out as, especially thanks to Noah. It was a joint endeavor, and that speaks so vastly to the Ouroboros concept and how strong of a core story writing theme it is. Strong individuals of character and skill that represent an idea turned real. And Mio, as one of the heads of those, was able to truly learn to accept the bounds of life, to be able to truly evolve and accept that life is what it is, and it could be as beautiful or as harsh as you make it out to be. How you handle these things, how you accept the losses, how you move forward, the impact you want to make, the legacy you want to leave, and all of these things shared through Mio's character was a beautiful and timeless arc. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't and you enjoyed. Come back for more Xenoblade content and more content in general. See you all in the next one.